Hello friends, welcome back to the channel and thank you all so much for your support. If this is your first time here, a special welcome to you. Today we'll be making a long-awaited video for American buttercream. This buttercream is so smooth, so stable, and doesn't have any air bubbles. So you can see how well it holds up on a cupcake. And the color is actually white. I think the lighting on my camera makes it look a little yellow, but it's actually really nice and white and creamy. So let's get straight into the ingredients. So we're going to be using unsalted butter, 454 grams or 2 cups of butter, and 1 kilogram of icing sugar or powdered sugar. And I don't normally sift my sugar, but if you feel like there are lumps in your icing sugar, it'll be good to sift it. Then we'll be using 1 cup of vegetable shortening or Crisco. We'll be using clear vanilla extract because it doesn't change the color of the icing. And then we'll use some salt and some milk. You can also use heavy cream or whipping cream. Then we need measuring spoons to measure. So we'll start by putting the butter into the bowl of our stand mixer. So the butter is at room temperature, so it's soft but not too soft that it's melting. So it's nice and soft, so it's easy to beat or whip. So I'll put it into the bowl and then I'll just break it up into smaller chunks so it's easier to whip it up. Then I'll add the vegetable shortening. So that's half a cup, and I'm going to add another half to make 1 cup of vegetable shortening. So I'm using 2 cups of butter and 1 cup of vegetable shortening. The shortening just helps to make the icing more stable, and it also contributes to the white color of the icing, since shortening is whiter than butter. We are going to beat those two together until they're nice and fluffy and creamy before we start adding our icing sugar. So put the stand mixer and put it on high speed so it beats the butter and the shortening until they are nice and creamy and smooth. So this would take about 5 minutes for the butter and shortening to get nice and smooth and creamy, and the color also lightens. So now I'll turn off the mixer and scrape the bottom and sides of the bowl to get any chunks from the bottom and the sides. So I'm trying to keep the speed of the video just normal so you can see the speed at which I'm beating, because when I start adding the icing sugar, I'm going to lower the speed. I'm just going to mix on low so that we don't introduce too much air into the icing, which will make it have air bubbles. So we're just going to beat that again on high speed to mix and get nice and smooth and creamy before we start adding the icing sugar. So at this point I'm going to add the salt so it mixes well into the butter and shortening mixture. So I'm adding 1 teaspoon of table salt because it's fine salt. So I'm just getting the icing sugar ready so I can start adding it. So I'm going to reduce the speed of the mixer to low. That's the lowest speed, or 1. So it's now on 1. It's just like mixing, not really beating too fast anymore. That's going to prevent air bubbles from forming in the icing. We want the icing nice and smooth with no air bubbles, so we're just mixing on low now while adding the sugar really slowly so we don't have a mess on the counter. I also have this guard that I hardly use, but yeah, that can also help prevent the icing sugar from splashing around the counter or on the floor. So I'll just use that now and then put the sugar slowly as we mix. So I've put about half of the icing sugar, and at this point the mixture is getting really thick and heavy, so we're going to add 1 tablespoon of milk. I'm using 2% milk. You can use whole milk or even whipping cream or heavy cream. That helps loosen up the icing so it's not too heavy and not too thick. So for the milk, I measured out a 1/4 cup, but you can add it as depending on the consistency of the icing you want. If you want it thicker, you can use less milk or cream. If you want it lighter or softer, you can add more cream or milk. You can even use water. So it all depends on the consistency you want. So I'm just scraping the sides and bottom of the bowl again before we continue adding the sugar, so the sugar doesn't stick to the bottom of the bowl. So put the guard back on and continue to add the sugar really slowly while mixing on low speed, on the lowest speed. Like I said, this icing sugar is quite smooth. It doesn't have any lumps. But if you feel like your sugar is lumpy, it'll be good to sift it. So it's getting thick again, so I'm going to add another tablespoon of the 2% milk. So I ended up using just 2 tablespoons of milk to achieve the consistency I wanted. Not too thick and not too soft. So I'm putting the rest of the icing sugar. And at this point we're going to put the vanilla extract. We're using clear vanilla extract so it doesn't change the color of the icing. The brown vanilla extract usually gives the icing a slightly yellow color, but sometimes I use that too, but I prefer this clear vanilla extract because it doesn't make the icing yellow or brownish. So after adding all the ingredients and mixing on low speed, I'll now stop the mixer and just scrape the bottom and sides of the bowl again to make sure no icing sugar is stuck to the bottom, and to ensure that everything is well mixed, well combined. So I'll scrape that and then mix one last time. Then I'll also give a little taste, taste the icing to make sure everything is well combined. And when I tasted, I noticed that the salt is not really enough, not to my taste. You know, American buttercream is really sweet, so I always like to balance the sweetness with some salt. So I'm adding half a teaspoon of salt to balance the sweetness. So I ended up using 1.5 teaspoons of salt. You can always adjust it according to your taste or preference. So just continue to mix that on low speed. I also noticed that the vanilla flavor is not really enough, and I like it to be more intense, so I'm going to just add a little splash of vanilla extract just to intensify the flavor. So just doing the final mix slowly. You can already see how creamy and smooth the icing looks. So you mix on really low speed so you don't introduce air bubbles into the icing. That's the secret to smooth icing with no bubbles, air bubbles. So we are done. The icing is ready. I'm just scraping the paddle attachment, and then if you notice that there's a little bit of air bubbles in your icing, you can always use the spatula to kind of press the icing against the walls of the bowl. That will help get rid of some of the air bubbles. But as you can see, this one is really nice and smooth and creamy and white and delicious. So you can use this on cakes and on cupcakes. So yeah, that's what I was saying about pressing it against the walls of the bowl, so that if there's any air bubbles, they can be, yeah, you can get rid of them that way. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, please leave a comment down below. I really appreciate your comments. And thank you so much for watching so far. I'm going to use some of the icing to ice a cake to show you how nice and smooth it is on a cake. So that part of the video I'm going to speed it because it's not really part of making the icing. I just wanted to see how the icing looks smooth on the cake and also on the cupcake. It holds up well in hot weather, and yeah, it's good for icing cakes and cupcakes. So I hope you make some and let me know how it turns out. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for all your support. I really appreciate it. If you are not subscribed yet, please, I would appreciate if you subscribe and stick around for more amazing content coming up. Thank you so much, and bye for now.